I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left.
Halloween H20 is directed by Steve Miner, who is known mainly for directing 2 of the Friday the 13th Jason movies. He directed Friday the 13th Part 2 and Friday the 13th Part 3. This is a horror, thriller, slasher movie. Halloween H20 sees the return of Jamie Lee Curtis, reprising her iconic role as Laurie Strode from John Carpenter's Halloween and Halloween 2. This film also stars Adam Markin as Will Brennan, Nancy Stevens as Nurse Marion Chambers, LL Cool J as Ronnie the security guard, Michelle Williams as Molly, Jodie Lynn O'Keefe as Sarah, Adam Han-Bird as Charlie, Josh Hartnett as John Tate, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jimmy, with Janet Leigh as Norma the school secretary, and Chris Durand as Michael Myers the Shape. This movie is rated R for sex, terror, violence, gore, and language. I would say this movie would be okay for anyone 18 years of age and older, but no one below that. This movie has a runtime of 1 hour and 26 minutes. Halloween H20 was released in theaters in the United States on Wednesday, August 5th, 1998. 2 days before Halloween, Michael Myers goes to Langdon, Illinois to the home of Nurse Marion Chambers. He breaks in and goes through her entire home office until he finds a file that Marion has hiding in her office labeled Laurie Strode, where everything he needs to find his sister is at so he can finally go kill her after all these years. It has been exactly 20 years to the day, October 31st, 1998, Halloween, since Michael Myers the Shape tried to murder his sister, Laurie Strode, on Halloween night, 1978, in Haddonfield, Illinois, when she was 17 years old. Laurie Strode faked her death and has been in hiding since just after the murders in 1978. She now lives in Summer Glen, California, and has changed her looks and her name. She now goes by the name of Carrie Tate, and she is the head mistress teacher at Hillcrest Academy High School, which is a private boarding school. She has a strained relationship with her teenage son John and is divorced from his father. She is a functioning alcoholic who suffers from nightmares and visions and is on multiple prescription medications. Laurie is very on edge most of the day. She has a vision of her evil brother before work. Her son John and his 3 friends Molly, Sarah, and Charlie decide to stay behind and not go on the weekend school trip to Yosemite National Park with the other students and faculty. They instead decide to throw a Halloween party, just the 4 of them, that night in an unused part of one of the campus buildings. During the lunch hour, Carrie goes into town to have lunch with Will Brennan, the school guidance counselor, and the man she is seeing romantically. John and his friend Charlie talk to the school security guard at the front gate named Ronnie, who is also a writer, into letting them off campus for a quick trip into town. Ronnie decides to let them go as long as they don't get caught. In town, Carrie and Will have lunch and talk a little bit, and Carrie has 2 huge glasses of wine, which she downs very quickly. While out in town, she finds her son John and his friend Charlie have left the school grounds. Charlie has shoplifted a bottle of wine for their Halloween party later on that night. Carrie doesn't know what they are doing there, but she chews out John in town, and a lot of people in town see their argument, and John says that he can no longer live like this. Carrie goes back to school and has John and Charlie in the car with her. After traveling for a day and a half, Michael Myers arrives in Summer Glen, California, and he sees his sister in town and follows her to the school she works at. He drives off just as she pulls into the school, and he parks off to the side of a secluded highway until nightfall. Ronnie gets in trouble with Carrie for letting Charlie and John loose. During an afternoon class in which John and Molly are in, and Carrie is the teacher of, the class is discussing the book they are reading, which is Frankenstein. Carrie calls on Molly to give an explanation of a certain part of the book, and Molly's explanation hits Carrie hard, thinking about her own life. Class ends and everyone gets ready to go to Yosemite. Even though Carrie doesn't want John to go, she changes her mind and gives him a permission slip to go on the school trip. But John doesn't go because of the Halloween party later on that night. The rest of the kids and faculty members board 3 buses and head out to Yosemite for the weekend. As it gets dark, Michael drives back up to the school, and the security guard Ronnie goes out to check who is in the strange car parked at the gate. He opens the gate and sees that no one is in the car, but the engine is still running and the lights are still on. He opens the door to the car and shuts off the engine and turns off the lights, and as he does, Michael walks through the gate into the school campus without him knowing. He stalks Ronnie for just a little bit and then cuts the phone lines on campus. He then makes his way into the interior of campus. Carrie is closing up her office for the night, and as she is walking to her house, which is on campus, she sees Michael, but she thinks it's another one of her visions, and she closes her eyes thinking it will disappear. She opens her eyes again, and it is Michael getting closer. She closes her eyes one more time, still thinking it's a vision, and as she does, someone touches her shoulder, and it is her boyfriend, Will Brennan. He scares the life out of her, but she tells him that she is okay, and they make plans to spend the evening together. After Will makes the rounds on campus, checking on the kids who stayed on campus, he goes back to Carrie's house and they spend the evening together. Carrie decides to come clean, and she tells him about her past. She tells him that her real name is not Carrie Tate, and that her real name is Laurie Strode, and that she changed her name when she went into hiding. She tells him that her older brother killed their older sister with a really big, sharp kitchen knife. She continues and says they put him away for a long time and that he got out and came after her. She tells Will that she was able to escape, but that he killed a lot of her friends and other people that night. She tells him it happened on Halloween. Carrie looks at him and says, "You've heard this story." He responds and says, "Yeah, who hasn't?" Then he says his name, Michael Myers. And then he asks what happened to the other sister. He says she died, right? And she tells him no, that she faked her death, and she is now the head mistress of a very posh, secluded private school in Northern California. He looks at her shockingly and says, "What?" She continues and says, hoping and praying every year that her brother won't find her. He continues looking at her and says, "You're telling me the truth?" And she says yes, and asks if he wants a drink, and he says yes. She goes to the fridge and gets a bottle of tequila out of the fridge and comes back to the sofa with it. He says to her, "So you've been living with this for 20 years? She says yes. Will asks Carrie and says, "You don't think after all this time he would still be coming after you, do you?" She responds and says that he sat in a sanitarium for 15 years waiting for me, and then one rainy night he broke out and decided to go trick-or-treating. Will asks how old she was, and as she tells him, she looks at John's birthday card on the fireplace mantel and sees the number 17 on it, and she responds to Will saying that she was 17. She starts thinking about John and the others, wondering if they made it to Yosemite. She goes to the phone and picks it up, and she gets a worried look on her face and runs to another room of the house. Will asks what she is doing, and she tells him the phone is dead. She runs to John's room and tries his phone, and it is dead as well. Getting more panicked by the second, she sees John's bags that he was supposed to take to Yosemite sitting outside of his closet and realizes he didn't go. She tells Will he didn't go to Yosemite, and she goes to her bedroom and pulls out a loaded handgun, a Smith & Wesson Model 36 nickel revolver. She tells Will she's going out to find John. As she opens her front door, Ronnie the security guard is standing there. Both scare each other, and she tells him the phones are out, and he tells her that he knows, and he says to her that there's a strange vehicle parked down at the gate, but he can't seem to find any signs of trespassing. Will tells them not to get upset yet, for everyone to calm down. She tells Ronnie that she's going to go look for John and the kids, and that they will meet back up at the gate. Ronnie goes back to the gate, and Carrie and Will go out looking for the kids. John and his girlfriend Molly and their friends Charlie and Sarah go to the building where they're going to have the Halloween party and just chill out there for the evening. After cooking up something for all of them to enjoy for dinner, Charlie goes back to the kitchen area to see if he can find a corkscrew for the wine bottle. It takes a while, so Sarah goes looking for him. Sarah finds him, and he tells her he found wine glasses but no corkscrew. Charlie goes upstairs using the small kitchen elevator. The lights go out downstairs where Sarah is, and she thinks Charlie is pulling a prank on her. Upstairs, Charlie is able to find a corkscrew, and he turns around and runs right into Michael Myers, who slashes his throat. Michael puts him back into the little kitchen elevator and sends it down. Sarah, on the bottom floor, hears the elevator stop, and she goes to it and opens the door and finds a dead Charlie with his throat slashed open. She screams and turns to run, only to see Michael standing in her way, holding his butcher knife. She climbs into the elevator where Charlie's body is, and as she closes the door, she gets part of her right leg stabbed by Michael's knife. As she arrives on the second floor, she gets out of the elevator, but her foot gets caught on Charlie's body. Michael cuts the rope and cable to the elevator, and the elevator comes crashing down on her leg, injuring it very badly. She is able to get her leg free, and the elevator goes crashing back down to the first floor. Sarah, on the floor in pain with a messed up leg, is trying to move, but is having a hard time. Michael makes his way back upstairs, and as he gets to her, He puts his foot on her neck and stabs her in the back multiple times, killing her. John and Molly heard the loud noise of the elevator when it crashed, and they both go to see what's going on and to check on Sarah and Charlie because they've both been gone for a while. They both go to the kitchen area together and find a huge trail of blood and start following it. As it continues, Molly grabs John's hand, and John says, "This is a sick joke." They both hear a dripping sound, and they open the door to what looks like the food storage pantry area and find Sarah's dead body hanging from the light fixture. Scared and shocked, they both back up out of the pantry and see a figure standing near the window. Molly sees the figure and says, "Who's that?" John looks and sees the figure and realizes immediately who it is. He tells Molly, "Let's get out of here," and they both run to the other side of the building to the window they all came in and make it outside and start running up a flight of concrete stairs and make it to a courtyard trail area between the buildings on campus. They both stop and Molly asks what they're going to do. John says, "We're going to go to the dorms and call the police." As they are about to start running again, Michael appears and grabs Molly's hair. John runs up to him and punches him repeatedly in the face, which makes Michael let go of Molly's hair. He throws John to the ground and stabs him in the leg. Molly grabs a rock from the ground and she goes up to Michael and uppercuts him with a rock. Michael falls to the ground and Molly helps John up and they both run to one of the dorm buildings, but Molly can't find her keys to get into the gate. They see Michael's shadow from the lights hitting the other buildings. She finds her keys and unlocks the gate, and as she closes the gate, she drops her keys on the outside of the gate and can't reach them. John, up against the door of the building, is telling her to get up, but she's trying desperately to reach her keys so Michael can't use them to get in. Just as Michael gets to the gate, John grabs Molly and pulls her up to where he is against the door to the building, which is locked. Michael gets to the gate and uses his butcher knife and slashes at them with the tip of the knife just inches away from both of them. John yells for someone to open the door, and Michael pulls his knife back and sees the keys on the ground, and he picks them up. Both the kids see him do that, and as they do, John starts beating on the door, hollering for someone. Molly desperately presses every button at the same time on the outdoor speaker for someone to hear them. Michael tried a few different keys already. Carrie and Will hear them and are on the inside of that very building. Looking out the window, she sees John and Molly and unlocks the door, getting them both inside just as Michael gets the gate open with the correct key. Carrie slams the door shut. Through the circular window, she sees her brother's masked face, but this time it's not a vision or nightmare, it's really him. He looks back at her. She looks down and pulls her revolver out of the top part of her jeans, and when she looks back up again, he is gone. Carrie and Will check on John and Molly. Molly says that John got stabbed, and they all run up the stairs into the long hallway. Will asks who was that, and Carrie says, "My brother." Carrie goes to the closet in the hallway. She opens it up and tells the kids to get in there and to barricade the door and lock it. She closes them both up in there and raises her gun to a defensive position, and as they move slowly through the corridor, Will asks what they do now. Carrie says, "Try to live." She tells Will to jump out the window. He tells her he's not leaving her, and she tells him that she's not leaving John. Will sees a figure come around the corner just down the hall from them, and he grabs Carrie's gun and fires several shots at the figure. The figure falls down on his back. As they move in closer, both of them realize it's not Michael, but instead it's Ronnie, the security guard. Carrie goes down to him and feels part of Ronnie's head as he lays there and sees blood on her hand. Will stands up in a panicked state, and as he is about to say something, a door opens behind him, and Michael comes out and stabs him from behind, killing him. Carrie runs off to find an empty closet and uses it as a diversion. Michael, who thinks she's in the closet, breaks the door down only to find it empty. She comes up behind him and hits him hard over the head with a fire extinguisher. She goes just down the hallway to where the kids are at and opens up the closet they're in, and she tells them to run, and she runs just behind them as well. Just as Michael gets back up, they make it out of the building and they make it to Carrie's car, and they all get in, and Michael is right there, and just as she is about to drive away, he is at the driver's side window. Carrie puts the car in gear and guns it. Carrie makes it to the gate and opens it and tells them to drive to the Becker's house just a mile down the road. She instructs them to call an ambulance and the police, and she orders them to leave without her. Molly moves to the driver's side position and drives away with John in the back, begging his mom not to do this. They drive off, and Carrie closes the gate and disables the gate's controls, locking her and the shape inside the school campus. She sees a fire axe and breaks the glass to where it is being stored and grabs it to use as a weapon. Now, in an angry and determined state, she realizes she has to end this for her sake and the sake of her son. She walks to about the middle part of the campus, and as loud as she can, she yells his name, Michael. As she is walking through the exterior of the campus, she continues to yell his name, Michael. She finds him in a mess hall building. He drops down from the ceiling behind her, and before he can do anything, she turns around and hits him hard in the chest with her axe. Not liking that at all, he slashes at her arm and slashes open the wound, the same wound on the same arm he sliced open in the 1978 attack. Shocked that he did that, she runs into the mess hall part of the building. Michael pulls the axe out of his chest and drops it and makes his way in there as well. Hiding under the tables, with Michael on top of the tables, she gets caught under one with him standing on top of it, but she makes it to another table. He jumps down and starts throwing the tables up to get to her faster. She grabs a standing flagpole and stabs him in the stomach with its spear-like tip on the end. Part of the pole breaks off and she throws it at him and makes her way to the upstairs kitchen. She finds a drawer full of butcher knives and pulls them out, dumping them on the floor, and as Michael gets there, she starts throwing them at him. He dodges most of the knives being thrown at him. A couple of knives get stuck in the door and wall behind him. As he closes in, she grabs the drawer, holding it up in front of her, using it as a shield as he tries to stab her. His knife now stuck in the drawer, Carrie sees an opportunity and knees him in the balls. Now, really pissed off for that move, he hits her with the drawer towards the door that the two butcher knives are stuck in, and she grabs them both and runs to another part of that building. Michael gets his knife free from the drawer and follows her. Carrie makes it to another hallway on the second floor. She hides in the window's huge blowing curtains, and as Michael comes in, she uses the butcher knives, stabbing him over and over again multiple times, making him fall off the balcony back down to another mess hall room. She sees him fall, and he hits a table which breaks his fall on the ground below, and she sees he's not moving. She goes down to where he is with one of the butcher knives stuck in his chest. She pulls it out and raises it just above her head and is about to stab him again when out of nowhere, Ronnie, the security guard, comes in and grabs her and pulls her away, telling her it's over and he's dead. Still trying to stab at Michael again, Ronnie continues pulling her away, but she knows he is still alive. After all that, the police, EMTs, ambulances, and some CSIs come to the school as well as the coroner, and they bring their transport van as well. John and Molly return to the school and have been treated for their wounds and injuries, as has Carrie. They put Michael into a body bag and zip it up and move it to the coroner's van on a gurney. As they start to load Michael into the van, Carrie sees her axe and takes it, and then grabs a police officer's gun from his holster and orders them to load Michael into the van. She gets in and drives away with him. As she is driving away from the school on the secluded highway, the body bag in the back starts moving a lot for a few minutes. Michael finds the zipper to it and opens it up and sees Carrie driving the van, and he moves in toward her. She slams on the brakes, sending him head first, flying through the windshield and onto the ground below in front of the van. Carrie watches carefully and says, "Come on," and Michael rolls over onto his back. Then she says, "Come on, get up." Michael sits up and then gets to his feet. Carrie hits the graphs and revs the engines and speeds towards Michael, hitting him, but he grabs onto the van where the windshield was with his hands and is hanging on. Carrie drives the van over a steep embankment, and the van starts rolling over and over as it falls down the embankment. Carrie, along with her axe, is ejected from the vehicle. Michael had already let go and is rolling down the hill in front of the van. Finally, the van comes to a stop and pins Michael between the vehicle and part of a tree. Carrie gets up bleeding and with a hurt leg. She sees her axe on the ground and grabs it. Carrie goes to where Michael is and stands in front of him. She says his name. The third time gets his attention. He reaches his hand out for her to help him, but she doesn't, and she takes her axe and swings it as hard as she can, decapitating Michael's head from his body. Okay, so that is the plot synopsis for Halloween H20. Here are my negatives for this film. They used two different masks for Michael. One was actually a real one and looked okay. It was decent enough. But the other one was a CGI digital mask, and it looked like absolute shit. I was glad that that one didn't show up on screen very much, but when it did, it looked awful. I still wish these movies would bring back the original Shatner mold mask from the first two films. I really loved the score music, but I wish they hadn't used score music from the Scream trilogy. I mean, it does work for the scenes where it is used, but I would have rather them use something from the Halloween saga that we've already had, or come up with something original for the scenes where the Scream score is used by Marco Beltrami. I wish the fight scenes between Michael and Laurie had been just a little bit longer. I mean, they're okay, but I just wish they would have been a little bit lengthier. I felt they were too short. Okay, for crying out loud, the character of John, does he ever comb his hair? I mean, did no one on set have a comb or a brush to help Josh Hartnett get his hair under control before the cameras were rolling? The hairstylist or wardrobe person, you need to do your jobs better. Either that, or they should have been docked pay for not doing their jobs and helping the actors get ready for their scenes, or fire their asses and get someone who will actually do the job they're paid to do. Okay, so those are my negatives. Here are my positives for this film. The story was great. It was awesome. It could have used a little bit more here and there, but for what we got for the end product, I really loved it, and it just works for me. It was great to see the return of Jamie Lee Curtis to the Halloween franchise after 20 years. It was great to see the character of Laurie Strode again, to see how things were going after all these years and how she was coping and how she moved on with her life after the Haddonfield events. I love the character of Ronnie, the security guard, played by LL Cool J. He was such a fun and funny character with a great personality. I loved his writing and how he would read things he had written to his wife over the phone during his downtime at work. John Tate, played by newcomer Josh Hartnett. This was his first movie, and for what he did, I thought he did okay. He probably could have done better, but overall, great performance, great character. I liked the other three high school kids, Molly, Charlie, and Sarah. They were fun kids and very funny. I hate that Sarah had to die so violently. I mean, dang, that was brutal with what happened to her leg and then being stabbed numerous times in the back by Michael. Whew. Also, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jimmy. That was a fun character. I like that when we first meet Jimmy, he is wearing a Jason Voorhees-looking hockey mask, a little nod by Steve Miner to the Jason Friday the 13th films he directed back in the day. Jimmy's death was pretty brutal as well. An ice skate blade to the face. I mean, damn. That had to hurt. I loved Adam Arkin's character, Will Brennan, the guidance counselor at the school. He is a sweet, funny, and yet charming guy. I loved the relationship scenes between him and Jamie Lee Curtis. They were very believable as a couple. Also, it was great to see the return of Nurse Marion Chambers at the first part of the film. I was glad she got a small part in this film, and what she did I liked. And I was also glad they gave a nod to Donald Pleasance for his Dr. Loomis character. That was great. I'm glad they did that. The look of this film is beautiful, very fall and autumn-like, with lots of leaves and getting dark earlier in the day. The colors used in this film reflect the fall and autumn seasons. We have oranges, browns, a few reds, some golds, and dark yellows. We do see some grays, some greens, and blues with whites and blacks as well. The use of all these colors is great, and it's not overly saturated, but the use of lighting with these colors is great. Also, the use of characters' shadows is great and done so brilliantly in this film. And I loved how they used the wind in those corridors and hallways, that they make the long curtains move and the wind blows them and is blowing leaves into the buildings as well. That was a nice touch. This movie is beautiful to look at. I loved John Ottman's Halloween score and what he did with the original theme music, especially during the opening credits and when Carrie starts hunting Michael with her axe. We do hear the original John Carpenter theme at the very end of the movie when it fades to black for the end credits to start rolling. Plus, during an early part of the film, we hear the Myers House theme from Halloween 1978. This score music was beautiful, and I always enjoy it in this film, and I have the score soundtrack for this film, or should I say the unofficial soundtrack for this film. The use of the original song, What's This Life For, by the group Creed, that was a nice touch as well. I love the two scenes that Jamie Lee Curtis has with her mom, Janet Leigh, in this film. Both scenes were great, but the second scene was very touching. Jamie Lee Curtis even said that she was grateful to do those scenes with her mom and that it was something very special. The rest area restroom scene was great and yet so creepy and scary. It makes us as audience members never want to stop at a rest area when we're on the road. That is how creepy this scene is. However, it is a brilliant scene. Several other scenes I love in this film. The scenes that I'm talking about are great and really give you that feeling of, oh, now Carrie Tate, Laurie Strode is going to kick some ass. Those scenes, the ones I'm talking about, great. Just brilliant. Okay, those are all my positives. Now it's grading time. I'm going to give this film, Halloween H20, 20 years later, a very well-deserved A+. This is my second favorite Halloween movie, and of course John Carpenter's Halloween would be my first. This movie is better than Halloween 2018. This movie is not perfect. It does have flaws. However, it is scary, but it's a fun movie to watch. Jamie Lee Curtis said that they made this movie for the fans and also to honor the first film as well. I felt like they achieved both of those goals. This movie does honor the first one in so many ways, and it pays tribute to the fans as well. I love this film. If you have seen John Carpenter's Halloween and Halloween 2, but you haven't seen Halloween H20, then I advise you need to see this one as well. It is so worth the watch, and let me just tell you, you won't regret watching it. That's all I have for this video. I'm going to say thank you so much for watching. Good night. God bless. I love all of you, and I will see you all in the next video. Happy Halloween.